Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I have a ton of huge news to share with you in today's video. So today's date is March 10th, 2025, and it's Monday. So welcome back to another wonderful week of news. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. So we're going to start off talking about this story here on your screen. Trump tells reporters on Air Force One intelligence ban will be lifted. The U.S. is just about ready to lift its freeze on intelligence sharing with Ukraine, President Trump said Sunday, as American and Ukrainian negotiators prepare for talks in Saudi Arabia. So just yesterday, this is what Trump said on Air Force One, speaking to reporters, stating that they're going to be lifting the ban on U.S. intelligence for Ukraine. We know that right now, according to the U.S., they're stating that only offensive intelligence is banned right now for Ukraine. Apparently, they're going to lift that completely here, probably over the next 24 hours. But they are apparently receiving defensive intelligence. Okay, at least that's according to the U.S. So we'll see what that happens here over the next 24 hours or so. But we know also today that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Saudi Arabia to meet with the Saudi Crown Prince and their Prime Minister over there, and then also soon after to meet with the U.S. delegation. And they're going to be discussing a lot of different things, okay? Talking about this war coming to an end. We'll see if a minerals deal gets signed. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We're going to see what the U.S. is going to be requesting as well. But we're also hearing, as of yesterday, actually, that the U.S. is apparently calling for Zelensky's resignation as part of a deal with the U.S. and with the whole minerals deal and everything, that in order to resume aid supplies to Ukraine, that could be part of it. They could call for his resignation. So I'll show you guys that information there in just a little bit. Also, last night in the Kursk region, I believe we had a Russian TOR or Tor air defense missile system that was destroyed. These things are roughly somewhere between like $15 and $25 million. We've got a crazy video coming out from there yesterday as that thing was destroyed. And then also, we've got some information coming out from the Samara region that Ukraine reportedly struck a refinery over there, an oil refinery, excuse me. That's approximately about 1,000 kilometers from the border of Ukraine. So we'll go over that as well. I've got some video footage coming out from there. So let's go ahead and jump into this, guys. We're going to hop on over here to X. No mainstream news article today, but I will have just briefly, I'll show you kind of a headline coming out from one, okay? So from Igor Sushko, breaking, President Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that the pause on military intelligence sharing for Ukraine or with Ukraine is just about to be lifted. So this was him yesterday on Air Force One. This is the photo coming out telling reporters about that, okay? So we should be hearing very soon that intelligence sharing for Ukraine is going to be, or the ban on the intelligence sharing, that is, excuse me, is going to be lifted, okay? Here was the official report that came out just today. This was from the Telegraph, and it says right here, Trump, U.S. has just about resumed intelligence sharing with Ukraine. America's president expects good results from talks between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday, okay? So we'll see what comes out from these talks today, but we'll talk about that more as we move on. So now jumping on over here to next, Trump wants more than resource deals to resume aid to Ukraine. A resource deal alone is not enough for the U.S. to resume aid to Ukraine, according to President Donald Trump, who has made this clear to his advisors. NBC News reports, citing sources, Trump is demanding additional concessions from Kiev before unfreezing U.S. military aid and intelligence sharing. Among these demands are Ukraine's willingness to cede parts of the territory occupied by Russia and to show progress in organizing presidential elections, possibly even President Volodymyr Zelensky's resignation. Okay, so you've seen how this is kind of building up here. They're going to call for Zelensky to possibly resign sometime soon. There's been a lot of talk about that over the last week, and we know the U.S. does want to see Ukraine hold elections, probably even before we see this war end. We could possibly see that, but we'll see if there's any pushback from Ukraine on that. So that was a new report today, okay? So we'll see if they end up signing a resource deal inside of Riyadh today in Saudi Arabia. So here's also that official report from Bild today. From next, Trump links Ukraine's aid to Zelensky's resignation. Donald Trump is reportedly pressuring Volodymyr Zelensky to step down in exchange for renewed U.S. military aid to Ukraine, according to Bild. Okay, this was just coming out today. Trump's team has already met with Zelensky's rivals, Yulia Tymoshenko and Petro Poroshenko, to discuss potential elections. Experts suggests this could be Trump's revenge for Zelensky's refusal to provide dirt on Hunter Biden back in 2020. So yeah, this is getting interesting. We'll see what happens over here, but it looks like that's kind of the U.S.'s plan is right now to kind of push Zelensky out of office, get somebody else in there, and then maybe we'll see the war come to an end after that. But I wonder if maybe with Zelensky in office, if it would probably this war would end more in Ukraine's favor. But if he gets out of office and maybe some of his political rivals get in, who knows if they start to side with Russia more, maybe give Russia a better deal out of this war coming to an end. We'll see what happens here, but this information was breaking today, and the other report I just showed you was coming out yesterday. So there's definitely a lot of talk about that over the last 24 hours. Also, for Max 24, destruction of Russian TOR air defense missile system. The cost of such equipment is about $25 million. Okay, so take a look at this video, guys, about 29 seconds long.
Охуеть! Это что же не прилет такие?
Okay, so that's pretty much it for the sound of this video, but you're going to see pictures here of this thing being destroyed. So this is an air defense system, from what I understand, up in the Kursk region. You can see a massive explosion there, and I don't know if these are Ukrainian soldiers recording this. It looks like it might be. Maybe they got close enough and planted some explosives on there. Was it hit by an FPV drone? Don't really know yet. But all we do know is that it was destroyed over here in the Kursk region just yesterday. Okay, that's in Russian territory. So pretty insane video coming out and a major loss for the Russians. Now for Max 24, Ukrainian UAVs attacked the Novo-Kuybishevsk refinery in the Samara region at night. The plant produces fuel for supersonic aircraft and has a design capacity of 8.8 million tons of oil per year. So yeah, approximately about 1,000 kilometers from the front line inside of Ukraine, maybe 800 kilometers from the border of Ukraine. Over here in the Samara region, we had the Novo-Kuybishevsk refinery that was reportedly hit, okay? No actual videos coming out today showing this thing on fire, but we've got videos that have been popping up in the area that were reportedly showing direct hits or some sort of explosions nearby the oil refinery, okay? So this is a report from Bliskovka. Samara region complains about a drone attack. Allegedly, UAV struck a refinery in Novo-Kuybishevsk. Earlier, local authorities warned of the threat of attacks. Okay, so from what I understand, too, Astra, which is a major telegram channel for Russia, they were coming out and reporting that the governor of the region was saying there was a fire on some sort of industrial facility, which usually indicates it's the refinery that was hit. They said there was a fire that broke out in an industrial facility. I don't think anybody was harmed in the attack, but there was a fire, so most likely indicating that this thing was hit. So here's a video coming out. Not really any sound in this video, but in the very beginning, you can see right over here in just a second, you're going to be able to see an explosion over here just in the distance, okay? So that possibly indicating that there was a direct strike. So right over here, there you go, you can see that on the Novo-Kuybishevsk oil refinery, okay? We've got another video with sound coming up, so we'll take a look at this. All right, we'll go ahead and pause it there. I know that can be very annoying hearing those car alarms going off, but we can see somebody's surveillance camera caught some sort of explosion over here in the Samara region, very close to where this person was living at. And yeah, so it looks like we potentially had some sort of direct strike on this refinery over here. But if I get more information, I'll let you guys know. Right now, unfortunately, no good videos coming out showing this thing on fire. So if we get that, I'll let you guys know at a later time. Also from Anton Gerashenko, President Zelensky arrived in Saudi Arabia. He is scheduled to meet with Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman. So yeah, he reportedly arrived in Saudi Arabia today for the talks, as I told you guys. So we're going to talk about that more as we move forward here. From next, UK advising Ukraine on peace talks with the US and Saudi Arabia. British government is actively coaching Ukraine ahead of its crucial negotiations with the US and Saudi Arabia, aiming to prevent another diplomatic clash like the Oval Office showdown with Trump, the Times reports. So it looks like the Zelensky met with Keir Starmer, and Keir Starmer was trying to give him some tips and trying to help him out and see if they can try to restore better relations with the U.S. We know that Prime Minister did kind of step in. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, that is, he kind of stepped in last week when we had that clash between Trump and Zelensky at the Oval Office. So yeah, reportedly they met to try to tame the tensions a little bit and see if he can help out Zelensky before he goes in and talks with Trump to see if they can get a better footing at the start of this meeting whenever they start to meet. Okay. Now for Max 24, if the U.S. likes the results of the meeting in Saudi Arabia, military aid supplies to Ukraine may be resumed, says Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Okay, this was reported by him today. And yeah, so we'll see if the U.S. ends up liking what they hear. But it looks like Ukraine may have to start making some concessions, and they basically need to show that they're willing to start ending this war, is kind of what the U.S. has been coming out and saying. But some of the demands that the U.S. has been making lately, Ukraine may not be favorable to some of these, as a lot of these could potentially benefit Russia. We'll see what happens. But yeah, maybe we're going to see over the next 24, 48 hours, maybe all these bans on military aid and intelligence will be completely lifted, okay? Now for Bliskovka. During the talks with the U.S., the Ukrainian delegation will propose a ceasefire at sea, a ban on long-range strikes, and the release of prisoners, according to Suspilny. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. This can be implemented quickly and monitored, says the source. Ukraine is also ready to sign an agreement on rare earth minerals during the meeting. Okay, so we could potentially see a major freeze of attacks, aerial attacks. Let's say drones coming into Ukraine may end. Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian oil refineries and facilities inside of Russia could end also. But it looks like at least the front line will not be frozen right now. The fighting will continue over there. So I'm not sure how that's going to turn out for Ukraine, but this could also push Russia to just heavily focus on the front line and push further into Ukraine. Right now, we are seeing Ukraine making some gains on the Eastern Front, and for the most part, they've kind of stopped Russia's assault. Russia's not really making any gains. I do have some reports on that today. Now from the Ukrainian Review, Zelensky apologized to Donald Trump for the incident in the Oval Office of the White House, sending a letter to the U.S. president, according to Steve Witkoff. Okay, so yeah, allegedly, looks like Zelensky has formally apologized to Trump. We were hearing that just last week that he was not going to apologize, so I'm not sure if maybe that was being held up for some sort of negotiating reason. But it looks like relations between the U.S. and Ukraine are starting to improve right now. Hopefully it stays that way. We'll see what happens. And looks like Zelensky could have potentially apologized to Trump as well. So here's a big update from Geo Insider. Breaking for the first time in a year, this morning Russia has resumed operations of the A-50 AWACS aircraft. The aircraft is conducting reconnaissance in the northeastern and northern directions, currently flying over the Oriol region under the cover of two Su-30 SM fighters. The flight originated from Ulyanovsk Air Base. This comes as the year-long pause in A-50 operations following the reported shooting down of such aircraft by Ukrainian forces. Yeah, so we haven't heard of this in a long time, but allegedly it looks like they are starting to carry out reconnaissance missions now. Okay, so it's interesting that they're saying Oriol region. Okay, so that's probably to maybe protect or provide intelligence for the Russian soldiers that are currently fighting in the Kursk region. Okay, so we know right now Russia's really working hard to try to get Ukraine out of the Kursk region as quick as possible before negotiation talks begin between the Ukraine and Russia. Because this is obviously going to give Ukraine some leverage holding on to Russian land. Maybe it'll give them some ability to get some territory back on the Eastern Front and maybe Crimea, who really knows here. But yeah, allegedly, Russia is starting to carry out reconnaissance missions again, although just, what was it, a year or so ago, maybe longer, that we heard that a Russian reconnaissance plane was shot down. So we'll see what happens with that, okay? But that's a big update today. Now for more translated. Reports indicate that U.S. halted maintenance of electronic warfare systems on Ukraine's F-16s without updated air defenses. These jets are exposed to Russian missile threats. So this is more of a rumor right now. I haven't really seen like mainstream news talking about this or anything, so it's possible that maybe Ukraine's F-16s, their electronic warfare systems, were also, the maintenance was halted on those, so this could have been part of the whole intelligence ban and the the military aid going to Ukraine, just more pressure being put on Ukraine to kind of get them to come to the negotiating table. But many people are starting to see this as the U.S. supporting Russia, and Russia definitely is taking advantage of a lot of these things right now. We've been seeing a lot of Russian missiles flying into Ukraine recently, especially ballistic missiles, and killing lots of innocent people. So very horrible. We'll see if we get an update on that later. Also from the Ukrainian Review again, Russia needs a pause in the war to restore strength. There are all signs of this. According to Kirill Budanov, okay, he's the head of Ukraine's HUR, their intelligence directorate. And also it says here, according to him, Russia has now reached the maximum production of weapons. They cannot produce more. So definitely, a pause is something that lots of NATO leaders, just leaders in the EU, also just in general, been coming out warning about this, that Russia needs a pause in the war, and then maybe in a short time they'll resume it. This will allow them to rebuild their forces, build up with more tanks again and more weaponry. Then they could use it to launch another attack onto Ukraine. And right now, the fact that, this war is continuing, Russia can only produce so many weapons, and, they're losing a lot of equipment at the same time on the battlefield. So it's making it harder for them to keep up, versus if there was a pause, they'd be able to build up a lot of their weaponry and their troops again, possibly launch another attack on Ukraine or maybe onto Europe. That's something that European leaders have been warning about. So that was a new update from today. Now for military news UA, Ukraine will not agree to a ceasefire on land where Putin will have the opportunity to restore the number of manpower and resume hostilities later. Advisor to the head of the office of the president of Ukraine, Suri Leshenko. Okay, so this is what he stated today, kind of stating the same thing, okay, that Russia needs a ceasefire on the front, or at least a pause, so that way they can build up their weapons and attack again at a later time. Okay, so that was also a statement coming out from this advisor here, okay, to Zelensky's office, head office. Now for Max 24, Denmark is ready to send peacekeeping troops to Ukraine, defense and foreign ministers after a foreign policy committee meeting. Okay, so it looks like Denmark now being open to sending peacekeeping troops to Ukraine. And there's just been multiple countries already. Okay, Germany, the UK, we had France, I believe, also. And I think even a report now that Australia is willing to do so also. And take a look at this from Anton Gerashenko. Russia warns Australia deploying peacekeeping troops to Ukraine would entail grave consequences, according to The Guardian. The Russian embassy in Australia accused Canberra of supporting war and escalating the conflict, despite encouraging shifts towards peace negotiations. It claimed that Russia has no intention of harming Australians and said Australia could avoid trouble by refraining from irresponsible adventurism in the zone of special military operation. For Australia, joining the so-called coalition of the willing would entail grave consequences. Once again, Western boots on the ground are unacceptable for Russia, and we will not remain passive observers. To those inclined to construe the above as a threat, it is not. It is a warning, the Russian embassy said. Okay, so you can clearly see Russia is not okay with any Western troops inside of Ukraine. We've already heard this, especially NATO members. Any NATO members that would be inside of Ukraine, Russia's not going to agree to any kind of a peace deal. But we're hearing repeatedly that many NATO members want to send their troops to Ukraine. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. I can't even see that being a thing in the future if Russia's not going to be okay with this. They'll probably never accept any kind of a peace deal with Ukraine if we hear that soon after NATO peacekeeping troops potentially entering Ukraine to secure their sovereignty. So we'll see how that goes. But this was the report today from The Guardian. Now from Evgen Istribin, if I'm saying that right, Ukrainians have completely stopped the Russian offensive in the last 7 days. The Russians have captured 0 square kilometers. This despite of all of Trump's attempts to help the Russians. Okay, so yeah, this is a graph kind of showing how just recently, especially at the start of the year, it just really started to decline here and fall off the cliff. In terms of Russian attacks, okay? Russian attacks inside of Ukraine are just really dropping, and we're seeing that with a lot of these charts that show Russian troop losses as well. Those troop numbers are just coming down big time. They're definitely probably cut in half from what we were seeing just 2 months ago. So this is a new graph that was coming out today, okay? Once again, showing that Russian attacks on the front are starting to slow down right now. All right, now an update from Max 24 again. Syrsky reports, who is the Oleksandr Syrsky is the commander of Ukraine's armed forces, in case you weren't aware of that. And he said the situation on the border of Sumy region with Kursk region, a number of settlements on the borderline, the names of which appear in the reports of Russian propagandists, no longer actually exist. They have been destroyed by the fire of the aggressor. Individual DRGs and small infantry groups of the enemy trying to penetrate the territory of Ukraine are being destroyed by the firepower of our troops thanks to the missile defense system created in advance. Defense system, I'm sorry. I made a decision on the spot to strengthen our group with the necessary forces and means, in particular, electronic warfare and unmanned component. Currently, there is no threats of encirclement of our troops units in the Kursk region. Units are taking timely measures to maneuver to advantageous defense lines. Okay, so this is kind of a report talking about what's going on in the Kursk region, and also we had some reports last week that inside of Sudzha, we had some Russian troops that were traveling through some of the pipelines over there and trying to infiltrate into Sudzha, which is a major stronghold inside of the Kursk region. And apparently that attack was thwarted. There was something like 100 Russian troops that were trying to infiltrate into Sudzha. And also we were hearing that along the borderline next to the Kursk region, we had some incursions into Ukrainian territory. Well, he's stating here that allegedly Ukraine has control of the situation over there, and also inside of the Kursk region, there's no threat of Ukrainian troops being encircled at this moment. So they're just kind of adapting to the situation right now and taking control of what they do have. Okay, so it still looks like Ukraine's holding strong in the Kursk region, also in the Sumy region of Ukraine. Now from next, UK Starmer rallies allies for Ukraine in virtual summit. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will host a virtual meeting of world leaders on Saturday to reinforce support for Ukraine. This follows his Coalition of the Willing initiative launched earlier this month in London. The goal? More aid, more coordination, and a united front against Russian aggression with Western military support facing uncertainty. All eyes are on the UK's next moves. Okay, so we're going to be seeing a virtual summit being held this weekend, and it's going to be held by UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and we're going to be seeing multiple NATO nations and EU leaders getting together to discuss Ukraine support. And we're continuing to see the EU right now really step up hard and do whatever they can for Ukraine, providing military assistance and also economic assistance at the same time, potentially in the hundreds of billions in terms of all these aid packages. So we'll be seeing a major summit coming up this Saturday, okay? All right, now from next, Twitter experienced widespread outages just before President Zelensky's arrival. Users worldwide reported issues accessing the platform, leading to discussions about the timing and possible connections to geopolitical events. While technical glitches are common, the coincidence has not gone unnoticed, prompting debates on social media about the nature of these disruptions. So I'm not sure if you guys were experiencing this morning. I had a little bit of a late start to my day today, so I didn't really see this happen. But reportedly 3 times today, we had Twitter or X going down. So I'm not really sure why that is. And I was actually inside the United States. You can see here the different areas that was being affected. And it was all around the same time, supposedly when Zelensky was arriving into Saudi Arabia. So I'm not sure if that's some sort of security thing going on there. There was a lot of talks that I was letting you guys know last week that maybe something might happen to Zelensky's plane while he was heading into Saudi Arabia. And we've been hearing a lot recently that the U.S. is calling for Zelensky's resignation. So could something happen to Zelensky? Not saying that is the case or the U.S. is planning that, but allegedly a lot of people were trying to connect this and say, hey, why is this happening around the same time that Zelensky was heading over to Saudi Arabia? But nonetheless, yeah, Twitter definitely experiencing some outages this morning several times, I believe 3 times this morning. Now moving on to Bliskovka, we got 2 more updates for you guys before we get you out of here. Air Defense Forces of Ukraine destroyed 130 out of 176 Russian drones, and another 42 imitator drones were lost in the area. Aircraft targets were shot down in Kharkiv, Poltava, Sumy, Cherniv, Cherkasy, Kiev, Kirovohrad, Zhytomyr, Vinnytsia, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Odessa, Mykolaiv, and Kherson regions. Okay, you can see a lot of regions being targeted last night inside of Ukraine, and 176 Russian drones entering their territory. Not too many reports of explosions or anything like that. Really in general today when it comes to attacks on either sides, nothing too extreme aside from maybe that oil refinery up in the Samara region that was being targeted today. But aside from that, inside of Ukraine, not too many reports coming out in terms of damage. So it looks like maybe a lot of those were brought down. Now from the Kiev Independent, these are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of March 10th, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. All right, guys, so our final update of the day, Russia's losses as of March 10th. 1,190 troops, 40 AFVs, 138 vehicles and fuel tanks, 18 tanks, 65 artillery systems, 241 UAVs, 1 MLRS, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. Okay, so today's probably some of the biggest numbers we've seen in over a week now, at least in terms of troop numbers, right about the same. We've been seeing around 12 to 1,300. 40 AFVs, a lot more than normal. We've been seeing closer to like 10 to 20 on average. And vehicles and fuel tanks up a little bit higher. We've been seeing a lot less than 100, maybe like 75 on average recently. Today, 138 over the last 24 hours. 18 tanks today, much higher than usual. Just recently, we saw some numbers like 3 to 5, and artillery systems usually seen around 20. This is up to 65. So it looks like we had a lot more attacks over the last 24 hours. But again, from what I understand, still no significant gains from the Russians. If anything, we've been hearing Ukraine making gains on the Eastern Front, especially in the city of Toretsk. That's a city we've been talking a lot about recently, as Ukraine has been making some gains in that city over there in the Donetsk region. So just wanted to give you guys some quick updates coming out today from this war, and I want to thank you very much for tuning in today. If you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell, that way YouTube can notify you. With that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care, God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.